Hi everyone, I wanted to make a video because there's some really important information that has come up. I wanted to start by talking about this Google Doodle, and I just wanted to thank everyone that has shared information about it. But what I eventually want to talk about is this part right here, which I believe represents the consummation of the covenant. This is something I've been wanting to try to explain for a really long time, for several months. And so I want to eventually lead up to that, but I just wanted to point some things out, some more things about this Google Doodle because it's very important. And I just want to thank Denise Carmen for pointing this out. She pointed out the fact that the symbol on here on the book is the radiation symbol, and so that's not something I was aware of. I knew it was a symbol for something, but I didn't know what the symbol was, and I knew that it had to be important. And you see that that the book is yellow, and so yellow would be the color indicating a warning. So this is basically a warning. And of course, if there were a nuclear missile launched, a submarine ballistic missile launched, then of course there would be a nuclear fallout and there would be radiation. So this appears to be a warning. Okay, and I just pulled up the Google Doodle again so that you can see it a little bit clearer, and I enlarged it so you can see the radiation symbol a little bit better. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is you see how these letters are pretty big: the G, the O, the L, and the E. But this G over here, they made it a little bit smaller. And when you look at it, when it's really small, for example, if you look at it in this thumbnail, what I noticed is you can't really even notice that G. All you notice is the big G over here, the O, the L, and the E, because they made that small g really insignificant. And so I realized that that's not the correct spelling, but phonetically this would spell the word goal. And so I believe that is the ultimate goal, is what is being depicted in this imagery. Okay, the other person that I want to thank is Arthur Prudent. He's brought up some really interesting points, some research, and I think together with his findings and what I've been seeing, I think we're really starting to solve this puzzle here. And so I wanted to talk about these comments. And I just want to say the puzzle that I'm talking about is the entire Bible. I'm not just talking about what's being illustrated right here. I'm talking about the mystery of the Bible. That's what I really want to talk about. But I just want to start by talking about this. And so the other thing that Arthur Prudent pointed out is that there was another video that was done on this Google Doodle. It's done by Mr. Caddy. And what he did in this video is he basically concentrated on the number 23, and what he's showing is how this entire imagery has the number 23 all over it, and the number 32, which is the number 23 backwards. And he's explaining in this video how I don't normally watch his videos, so I don't know what he's been talking about, but I think based on what I'm understanding is he's noticed this pattern of 2332 and how it relates to the Star of David, which he talked about in the beginning, and how it relates to the number 6. But I think he made a comment that he doesn't really know or understand what this pattern is, but that he's been seeing it everywhere, and he's been pointing out, and in this video he's pointing out how the number 23 is all over this Google Doodle. And he basically, the entire video, which is almost or about 30 minutes, is basically pointing out all the 23s just in this Google Doodle. Okay, and for me that's confirmation that this Google Doodle is all about DNA, that's what's being depicted here ultimately. I believe that is the mystery of the Bible, but there's a little bit more to the mystery that I want to talk about. But he was pointing out all the 23s, and there's a couple of 23s, or you could say 32 as well, because it's 23 and 32 backwards, that I saw immediately when he said that he didn't point out, which I was surprised, because once he mentioned the fact that the number 23 was all over this Google Doodle, I was able to see it really easily. And what I thought were just random squiggly marks with these yellow lines, I was able to clearly see that it's the number 23. There's a 2 and a 3 here, and then the number 6 over here, and then you had a 2 and a 3 on this side, which if you look at it backwards it would be 32. And so that I saw those right away, but he didn't mention that in the video. He mentioned the fact that there's 2 loops on this side, 3 loops on this side, making the number 23 right at the top. And I'm not going to go over all the 23s that he points out in this video. It's about 30 minutes long, and he's basically pointing out all the 23s in this video. But for me, that's confirmation that this is all about DNA. And incidentally, this number 2332 is the Strong's number for the word Hava, which is the name Eve in the Hebrew. It's the word for Eve. And I'd mentioned before that this is all about DNA. I believe that's why Eve's name is symmetrical. I believe that's why God's name is symmetrical. And even the Strong's number is symmetrical for Eve, as you can see here. It's 2332, which is 23 backwards. So I believe, again, this is all confirmation that this is about DNA, and this is about the restoration of the temple. Of course, Satan has his plans, which are going to fail, but I'm more interested in God's plans, and how God's plans seem to be depicted in this imagery more importantly than what Satan's plans might be. But as you can see, it has the numbers 23 over here, and as I explained in this comment over here, I believe the numbers 4 and 6 represent DNA, and not just because there's 46 chromosomes in the human body, but I believe independently the numbers 4 and 6 represent DNA, and I'll explain that in a minute. But as I said earlier, Mr. Caddy had pointed out that there's 4 peaks over here, so that would be 4, and then you have the number 6 over here. So there's no 6 on this side, but you have the 23 on both sides, and then you have the 4 and then the 6. So you have 2 23s and then 4 and 6, because 23 and 23 is 46. So again, I feel like this is depicting DNA. That's the ultimate goal. Satan wants to take over the DNA, and then of course God wants to correct our DNA, and that would be the restoration of the temple, the restoration of the bride. And that's why Eve, the Strong's number for Eve, for Hava, is 2332, because Eve represents the bride. Okay, so now I want to explain why the number 4 represents DNA, and that's because there's 4 different nitrogenous bases or nucleotides that the DNA is made up of. That would be adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So all the DNA code, these would be like the 4 letters that would make up the DNA code. And the code is actually a sequence of 3 nucleotides or nitrogenous bases. So it would be a sequence of 3, and when you have protein synthesis, this is when the DNA, it's interesting the words that are used here, which are transcription and translation. So this is how the DNA carries out its functions. First it has to be transcribed or copied, and then so this is similar to the DNA replication when the DNA replicates itself, but these are messenger RNA. These are proteins that go out of the nucleus into the body to carry out the individual functions. And so this is called translation. So it's really interesting, the terms that are used here. But once you get to this point, the codon, which is a sequence of 3 letters, gets matched up with what is currently called an anticodon, and so then you have a set of 6. Okay, and there's some more details that I explained in this comment over here, but I'm gonna just go ahead and cut to the chase for the purpose of the video. Okay, and it was when I saw an image of Matthew 17, is where it talks about the transfiguration. It's really interesting that it comes up in Matthew 17. But when I saw one of the images, it was actually this image over here that I saw. And when I saw this image, I immediately thought of the imagery concerning the DNA, where the codon is being matched up with the other codon, and this right here would be the transfer RNA, which is the messenger RNA that transfers the amino acids to the ribosome. And so, as it mentions here in this video, it's in a clover leaf shape, so it looks like a cross. That's usually how it's depicted, so I thought that was really interesting as well. And so this is what leads to translation. Of course, in the Bible, the word translation refers to the transfiguration. And so when I saw this imagery in Matthew 17, where you had the 3 apostles at the foot of the mountain, and then you had Jesus with Moses and Elijah at the top of the mountain, I immediately recognized this imagery as being that of DNA when you have translation. Now, what's really amazing that Arthur Prudent pointed out, and I'm not sure if you can see this comment, I'm going to enlarge it, but the Strong's number for Yeshua, and I'll show you that in a minute, but the Strong's number for Yeshua is 3444. And so when you have a codon, there's actually, based on the 4 nucleotides or the 4 nitrogenous bases, there's actually 64 different combinations that you can make of a sequence of 3, which would be a codon. Okay, and here's a link that he provided that explains that, and I can put that in the description box. But the way you would calculate that is by multiplying 4 times 4 times 4. Okay, and I just tried it out to make sure it works, but that's how you would come up with how many different combinations you could make of the 4 nucleotides in a sequence of 3. The way to do the calculation for that would be 4 times 4 times 4, as it explains in this article. And so this would be 3 base pairs of nucleotides, or a codon, a sequence of 3. And the way to find out how many different combinations you can make with these 4 nucleotides is to multiply 4 times 4 times 4, but it's based on 3 base pairs or codon, so it's based on the number 3. And the Strong's number for Yeshua is 3444. So it's basically the formula for the DNA, which leads to translation. And it's really interesting that the word Yeshua actually comes up 78 times, for a total of 78 times. And over here it says it occurs 78 times in 77 verses in the Hebrew Concordance. And of course, this is technically the year 5778, but I believe based on God's calendar and the way God planned it, this is still year 5777, but according to the Jews it's 5778. But I'm running out of time. I have a lot more that I would like to share about DNA and how I believe it's the mystery of the Bible. but I'm going to have to continue in the next video. Thank you.